De'Von Achane and Alvin Kamara are top 5 fantasy plays this week, while Patrick Mahomes is going to get his first top 10 quarterback finish in almost a full year this weekend. We reveal and debate our Week 9 running back and quarterback rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy football championships. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk. When I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get started with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we're into our Week 9 prep. We got to prep for Week 9. Got to get you those right lineups all set up to win your week. We're going to start with our running back and quarterback rankings today, as we always do on Wednesdays, and then get to wide receivers and tight ends on tomorrow's show on Thursday. Starting at the top here with our running backs, we have 4 out of the same top 5 running backs. Kyren Williams is actually both of our running back ones this week. He's been amazing, scoring nonstop. Derrick Henry, of course, at the top. Saquon Barkley has a great matchup against the Jaguars. Bijan Robinson, we also both have in our top 5. You actually have him at number 2. I have him at 5. But we have a little bit of differences here at the top. I have De'Von Achane as my running back for this week. You have him at 10, so I still think he's a good play. And then you have Alvin Kamara as your running back 5. Well, I have him down probably too far at 13. I think I'm going to move him up. But with Achane, I just really like this matchup against the Bills. They're allowing the 3rd most points per game to running backs, most receptions, and most receiving yards allowed to running backs this year. The Bills have allowed. Achane's been getting a ton of targets from Tua, is electric when Tua is on the field. So Achane running back 4 this week.
Yeah, I haven't dropped down a little bit, only because Tua has a history of struggling against the Bills, and will that hurt them a little bit? And the game script could go south on them. I think they'll give Achane still the carries, and I still have him at 10, so I still think he's a RB1 easily this week. The reason I have Alvin Kamara that high is they're playing the Panthers. Derek Carr looks like he's trending to return, but I think this is a big Kamara game. They got to feed him quite a bit. The Panthers' run defense is terrible. They got a break last week against the Broncos. They kind of did a committee approach, but Broncos had so much success passing the ball. I think with Carr just coming back and just really limited receivers, right? After Chris Olave, you don't have Rashid Shaheed. There's some question marks there. I think the game script should also say the Saints, for a change, play from ahead. So I like Kamara quite a bit. I think he's going to get the volume and deliver here. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about is Taysom Hill actually could see some action in this game and steal some of the goal line work. But I think Alvin Kamara can score twice easily against the Panthers this week. I mean, he's their best source in the red zone, and the Panthers are really not good in that area at all. So that's why he's that high this week for me.
Yeah, and I think that's very fair. I'm going to end up moving him into my top 10. I've been a little bit worried about him. His production has gone down. I mean, he's getting so many targets still, but last 4 weeks, running back 27, 17, 38, 14, hasn't finished as a top 6 guy since week 4, but the matchups is too good. And if Derek Carr is back, then he needs to be moved up for sure. With Kenneth Walker, though, because we both have him back inside our top 10. You actually have him as your running back 6 this week. I am at running back 9. So we're believing he's going to make a big bounce back after a really, really bad week 8. He gets the Rams this week. Why are you feeling confident in him after he finished as running back 41 in week 8?
Yeah, he had one really awful game. I don't know what happened to the Seahawks. I mean, they had so much confidence after going in and beating Atlanta, came back and played Buffalo. They just never got out of the gate, anyone. And let's hope DK Metcalf comes back, because that opens up the field a little bit where you have to respect him, and it really allows you to run the ball a little bit better. But I just like this game in general for fantasy points for Rams Seahawks. It's a pick 'em, so you figure it's going to be even with the game's script here. The defenses are both not that good. I know the Rams played a little bit better last week against the Vikings, with their pass rush. But I think this game is going to go back and forth, a lot of scoring opportunities for the backs. We know Walker, much like Kyren Williams, makes a living off scoring. And I think that's going to happen a lot in this game. These teams are going to go back and forth. I'm hoping Metcalf plays here. If that happens, then you will see a lot of points go up on the board. And I just want a piece of this. So Kenneth Walker has been rather good otherwise this season, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And again, the Rams are not a scary defense by any means.
No, they're not. And if DK Metcalf is back, then I think Kenneth Walker becomes a great, great play this week. But that really was truly his first bad game of the
Yeah.
season. You got to roll with him. Other guys that we have inside our top eight, Joe Mixon has been killing it.
Yeah.
Gibbs has been killing it. Jonathan Taylor's back. He's going to get all the work. You have him in. James Cook has been great. Like, all these guys are obvious starts. But we do have one guy that's typically ranked higher, but has been stinking as of late, Breece Hall. We both have him as our running back 11 this week. And honestly, I cannot tell you if that's too high or too low, right? Because over the last 5 weeks, he's finished as a running back 57, 44, 8 and 8, and then 31. So he gets the Texans this week. Texans have allowed the fourth fewest points per game to running backs this season, have been stingy against pass catching running backs as well. Too high or too low? I don't know.
Yeah, it's very difficult to say. I mean, I think they're at home, so that's helpful. And the other thing is, like, the Texans are not just completely a shutdown defense, right? You can move the ball on them. And I think that's the key is can you get the touchdowns? We had Braylon Allen score last week as well. So does that happen? I think the Jets have just not known what they're doing, right, the entire time. And it's a shame because if they knew what they're doing, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and just looking at what he's done, Hall would all be better, I think. And they just are clueless. I thought the offense coordinator change would help Hall. It's helped to some degree, but not with the consistency we want. And look, Vegas likes this game being pretty close on Thursday night, so that could keep the Jets involved. It's kind of surprising, right? They're 2-6. The Texans are 6-2, but the Texans also come a little bit banged up offensively, where the Jets can keep themselves in the game, and therefore Breece Hall getting the key touches in this one. So he's okay. I think he's going to be a borderline RB1, RB2 for me for most weeks at this point.
The issue is we thought, with Aaron Rodgers, this team's going to be in scoring position a lot more often than they have been in the past, and that's just not happening. Even when they got in scoring position last week, it was like a short little pass to Xavier Gibson. Not quite what we're looking for there. We would love to see Breece Hall get more of those goal line work when they actually do finally get there. He's still like a must-play guy because we've seen him have a lot of big weeks already this season. It's just going to be an up and down year for him. He's kind of like the Mike Evans of running backs, where you got to play him because you know the upside, but you're going to get some really bad games in there as well. One other guy at the top here in my top 12 that we differ on, I have Aaron Jones against the Colts as my running back 12. You have him 10 spots lower than me at running back 22. I do think he lands somewhere in the middle there. It's not like I feel a strong conviction that he's going to land running back 12, but I do think this is going to be a closer game than we expect, right? Because Joe Flacco is going to throw up some balls against that Vikings secondary. They're going to have to put up points to beat this Colts offense. And he's been getting a lot of rushing attempts and a lot of touches, 19 rushing attempts last game. It only turned into 58 yards. But against the Colts, they're a weaker run defense. I think he ends up having a good game. It'll come down to the touchdown or not if he's running back 22 or running back 12.
Yeah, and he'll probably finish. We know this. He's going to finish as running back 17. We just know this. He's going to finish right halfway in between. But yeah, Aaron Jones, I'm just not excited to play. Like
he looks really good, though.
He looks good. He's not a guy that I've been like interested in all in DFS, because if he doesn't get the touchdown, then he's really limited. And they don't really throw to him as much as I thought they would. And now you have maybe TJ Hawkinson returning, so that could distribute the targets a little bit more between Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Jalen Naylor and all these guys they're trying to get involved here. So I think that's been the one disappointment where they're purely counting on the rushing yards for Jones. So yes, they do need to be ahead in this game. It's kind of up and down, back and forth. The Vikings are also a quick team to say, we're just going to pass it all day or all night in this case on Sunday night. So there's a little bit of concern, but still he's a playable guy, however you look at it, as an RB1 or RB2 for sure.
One game we have not named at the top here inside our top 12 is Josh Jacobs, who went absolutely off last week with 2 touchdowns over 100 rushing yards. He's ranked a little bit lower for us this week. We're going to get into where he's ranked against the Lions here right after we take a quick break. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in a loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on dream vacation, put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotel and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them towards a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built Points has been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to join built.com/LockedOnNFL. That's join, JOIN, built, BILT. So again, JOINBILT.com/LockedOn. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Again, that's join, built.com/LockedOn to start earning points with your rent payments today. Like I brought up before this break, Josh Jacobs, monster in week 8. He, especially with Malik Willis out there, all they do is run. And he got 2 touchdowns, put up a ton of yards on the ground. But this week he has to face the Lions. Lions are a tough run defense. They're allowing the 3rd fewest points per game to running backs this year. But we don't have him too low, right? I am at running back 15. You have him at running back 17. He's still a good play. We're just not expecting him to do what he did last week or even get close to it.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. I don't know if Malik Willis can duplicate what he did in his previous stint filling in for Jordan Love. We expect Jordan Love to miss the game with a groin injury. I think they'll probably err on the side of caution here with him so it doesn't get aggravated. So that's a bummer because we thought this could be a great game for the passing games. Now, they will run with volume, but again, could the Lions build a lead here, then they kind of go away from the running game and just throw a lot of passes here, forced to do that with Malik Willis. So there's a little bit of that, but still, I mean, where we have him is still very strong. It's just hard to duplicate a game of that level for the second week, especially in a tougher matchup. So it's fair to drop him down a little bit, but he still should eat the high leverage volume here and have a good chance to at least score along with a pretty good day from scrimmage.
And it's not like the Lions have a lot of the 3rd fewest points, but it's not like we haven't seen running backs have good games against them. I mean, Kenneth Walker had 3 rushing touchdowns against them in week 4. And over the last 2 weeks, Aaron Jones put up 19 fantasy points, and Tony Pollard last week put up 13. He had 20 carries, 94 yards. He just didn't score a touchdown. So Josh Jacobs can still have a fine day. I just don't expect a huge day from him. Ramondre Stevenson was another guy that had a big game in week 8 against who are they playing? The Titans?
Jets.
The Jets. They play the Titans this week. This is my thing with Ramondre Stevenson. Anytime I give him a chance in my lineup, he does absolutely nothing. And anytime I bench him, then he has a great game. I don't really know how to figure him out, but this Patriots game should be close against the Titans. It's not like the Titans should be blowing them away. Titans are middle of the pack against running backs in fantasy this year. I do think he's a solid play. We both have him ranked. Actually, you have him ranked as your running back 18. I'm a little bit lower at running back 22, but I still think he's a very playable guy this week.
Yeah, the one thing we're going to watch is a Drake May in there. Does he get cleared of the concussion to return, or is it Jacoby Brissett? Actually, I think Stevenson's value goes up with Brissett because, again, I think they need to lean on the run more in a game like this. If they Drake May, they might open up the passing game actually a little bit more because he's just a more competent passer at this stage. But when you look at Ramondre Stevenson, I think when you had Gerard Mayo call this team soft, it wasn't just referring to the defense. He was talking to the offense too, like run the ball, use the offensive line as your strength and kind of overpower teams. And that's what they did to the Jets. They kind of blew them off the ball when the game counted the most. So I think Stevenson is back getting that good blocking he needs. And again, now we know that this game was probably going to be an even game script, or the Patriots might be ahead. And they were even trailing against the Jets. And he had some good success in that game last week. So Stevenson is locked in. They paid him money, so they do like him. They're not trying to doghouse him anyway. They know he's a very important offensive asset, and I think you'll see it again this week in a game that they really have a shot to win and keep the Titans down.
Yeah, hopefully I'm going to give Stevenson a chance this week. Back into my lineups. I'm sorry if I jinx him again, but hopefully he can get the workload. He can get the goal line opportunities again in a game that should be close. Some other guys we have as RB2s, meaning running back 13 through 24. You got your typical Kareem Hunt, your David Montgomery, your James Conner, Chuba Hubbard, Tony Pollard, Brian Robinson Jr., J.K. Dobbins, even Tank Bigsby. These are all guys that have just been easy running back twos. They don't have major upside, but in any given week, they are a good shot to land as RB2, and they should be in your lineups. But I want to talk about a guy that stole another man's job on Monday Night Football, and that's Tyrone Tracy Jr. If he does play, because he unfortunately got the concussion on Monday night, it's probably very doubtful that he plays. But if he does play and he goes against the Commanders, where would you have him ranked? And then if he doesn't play, would you put Devin Singletary where you would have him ranked, or a little bit lower than where you'd have Tracy?
Yeah, those are all really good questions. Right now, Tyrone Tracy, I'm being conservative with him because I don't know if he's going to go this week, but I'm at 25. You am at 26. So we're very close on that, considering that. And also, if he plays, then it means Devin Singletary is touching the ball. But what we also know, if Tracy's ruled out, then you'd bump up Singletary because there's no Tracy to steal the ball from him, and he should hit high volume Eric Gray just getting a handful of touches. You do have to keep in mind that Singletary ran well in the first matchup, had 95 yards and a touchdown against the Commanders, looked really good. The Commanders can be run on, right? I mean, we saw DeAndre Swift do it last week. You can run on them actually a lot easier now than passing on them. It used to be the other way around early this season, but the Jonathan Allen injury kind of flipped the script on that. So you can run on them. So that's that. And Singletary needs to be a big part of what they do, and he would also catch a few more passes. So here's how you look at it. Tracy's out. Singletary gets higher volume. You can bump him up. If Tracy is splitting, I think you can bump him up knowing that he's playing into clear RB2 status. But however you look at it, you're probably going to get an RB2 out of the Giants this week. And the best thing is having both. In leagues, I have both of these guys. So I'll just pivot to the one that's healthiest is going to be in the lead for these teams. So that's why, again, even if it's a situation like this, grab the two backs. You never know how it can flip in your favor. It's really worked out well for me to have both of them on my team.
Yeah, and I think if Tracy's a go, that means he's a go, right? That means he cleared concussion protocol. There's nothing to be holding him back. Yeah. He got 20 carries. Singletary got 2 on Monday Night Football. And Tracy looks so good. So I do think if Tracy's a go, he's the clear lead back. I'm not worried about Singletary at all, and he'll be great. I'll move him up from where I didn't think too hard about his ranking because I don't think he's going to play. Yeah. I just threw him in there at running back 26 for right now. I'll move him into my 20s if he does play. Singletary, though, will be around running back 24 if Tracy doesn't play. I think both are solid plays this week, whoever gets the start. Now, I want to move over to Alexander Mattison because he's been pretty solid as of late. I mean, in week 6, he was the running back 16. In week 7, running back 18. He got a really hard matchup last week against the Chiefs, and we said that, don't play him. He was running back 37. It was bad, but he still got the start. He still got the majority of the work, and now he gets the Bengals, who do allow points to running back. So are you plugging Alexander Mattison back into your lineup as a low-end RB2?
Yeah, low-end RB2 or flex play, just because of the matchup alone on the Bengals. Again, Raiders need to stay in this game a little bit because the Bengals could really score well on them and move the ball, and that would limit the opportunities that he's going to get. So, yeah, I think you plug and play based on the volume, and there's really no one else touching the ball. Like last week, for sure, there was no way you're going to play against the Chiefs to shut down all the running backs. But the Bengals have struggled against most running backs this year. So you can do a lot worse than Madison, but I prefer to play him as a flex than an RB2 if I can, just because he's attached to the Raiders offense.
Yeah, it's not looking pretty for the Raiders, but Madison gets the receptions, he gets the touches, he gets the goal line work. So if they can score it all against the Bengals, there's a good chance it's Alexander Mattison who does it. I mean, Madison got chances against the Chiefs. They just shut him down 4 times at the goal line. But yeah, I think Madison's a fine play. Doesn't have super high upside, but is a viable play this week. Now, these other three, rank them. I did already say Tank Bigsby is in our top 20. It's just because he gets the volume, right? But it is a hard matchup against the Eagles, and Travis Etienne could be back. So if Etienne's officially back, we might have to move down Bigsby a bit. But rank Tank Bigsby, Chase Brown against the Raiders, or Raheem Mostert against the Bills. How would you rank those three guys?
Yeah, that's how I have them ordered. I mean, Bigsby, I'm a little bit concerned about only because, again, you mentioned the Eagles matchup is tough, but he's still their volume guy. He can still score. He can still reel off a long run, and he's dangerous. We know he has that explosive ability. That's why he makes it into the RB2s. Now, Chase Brown, a little bit worried about Zach Moss, but then we know Zach Moss has pretty much been the receiving back. Chase Brown has been kind of the power back that they're looking at, and they should be playing from ahead. The Raiders stink against the run, so I do like Chase Brown quite a bit this week. And Raheem Mostert, I don't know what his touches are. It seems like he gets goal line work and he's touchdown dependent, but if you don't get that, then what do you have with Raheem Mostert? Not a lot. So here's hoping if you have him down there, I am around 28. If you have him as an RB3, you're just hoping he gets to the end zone because, again, he's not really seeing the work after Achane.
Yeah, some people might want to play him after that 2 rushing touchdown performance in Mostert last week. And the Bills have allowed third most fantasy points for running backs, but they've only allowed 4 rushing touchdowns to running backs all year. They're allowing those points through the receptions and the receiving yards they're allowing running backs, which has been Achane's role. So I'm not high on Mostert this week. At Bigsby, definitely number 1 out of this group, and then Chase Brown after that. I think Brown's a fine flex play this week. He's getting the majority of the work, and neither back is looking good whatsoever. They can't average over 3 yards per carry to save their life. But then he's also getting the goal line work. So Chase Brown is an okay low end RB2 flex play this week as well. It's time to get into our quarterback rankings, and I'm excited. We have the same exact top 8 quarterbacks. Now, slightly different order of them, but the same quarterbacks inside our top 8, including Mr. Patrick Mahomes himself, which I always refuse to rank that high, but I'll tell you why I believe in him this week right after a short break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football, as we told you at the top, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the second half NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's a great deal there. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, all for the rest of the season into the playoffs. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can also check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So it's all there for you to check out how you're doing and get in on the action while tracking the action as well. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Michelle, it's time to continue the show here and look at what we have in our quarterback rankings. You did hint before the break that we had the same 8. I'll just go down the top 8 that I have, and then we'll see how it differs from yours. Jalen Hurts, #1 after the monster week last week. Gets the great matchup against the Jaguars. Lamar Jackson should keep it going. That's who I like at #2. Jane Daniels at 3. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, if he plays. I don't know if that's going to happen. Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes would be my top 8. The big difference you have is you have Josh Allen at 2. I have at 4. Very little change there. Lamar Jackson, you've got swapped with Allen. Otherwise, we're pretty close there. Burrow ahead of Love, and then Murray and Patrick Mahomes at #8. Let's talk about that because that is the one that seems anomalous. I hate to say that, but the guy that doesn't seem to belong in that group, right, based on the production, he's been the QB2 this season. So why are you finally believing in Patrick Mahomes? I think I know why, but let's go.
I mean, yeah, it's the matchup completely, right? Because this
Absolutely.
man has still not finished as a top 12 quarterback since the middle of the 2023 season. I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes, a great NFL quarterback. He should not be considered a great fantasy quarterback. I don't know how many times I need to say this. He should be on waivers and he should be considered a streaming option in good matchups. And that's what we have right here. I mean, sooner or later, Mahomes has to finish top 10. Even the worst quarterback sooner or later finishes a top 10 fantasy quarterback. But the Buccaneers are allowing the most points to quarterbacks this season. these are the quarterback points that they put up. Lamar Jackson in week 7, 34 points. Kirk Cousins in week 5, 34 points. In week 8 last week, 28 points. Jaden Daniels in week 1, 28 points. Bo Nix in week 3, 19 points. If Bo Nix can put up 19 points and Patrick Mahomes can't put up at least 24, 25, like this should be a monster week for Mahomes. Kareem Hunt is slowing down a little bit, right? He's not as efficient. They should be passing against the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield's going to be passing a lot, probably a lot of interceptions too. But Mahomes needs to score 3 touchdowns in this game. Like, come on, please do it.
Yeah, and he's got DeAndre Hopkins now, so they might want to unlock that weapon. He's got the touchdown down with Kelsey for the season, so I think he's going to put up some much better games in the second half season. They do get some resistance from some better teams. Unfortunately, this could have been even better for him, right? If the Buccaneers had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, then you'd have Baker Mayfield challenging him a little bit potentially. It's still in Kansas City. I still think the Chiefs are going to handle this pretty well, but it's one of those games where Patrick Mahomes could be capped on the passing yards if they were playing from ahead, if it's like 250. There are 9-point favorites in this game. And I could easily see a game where he has 203 or something like that, 200 yards and 3 touchdowns easily. That's what it comes down to. Can he get the 3rd touchdown here? And he's locked in with Xavier Worthy. He's looking good with Kelsey. Let's see if they want to kind of grease D-Hop in his first real significant action for this team. Does he throw to other guys as well? So Mahomes just has to get it done. I think the better games are coming. Now, I also give you advice. The way that Michelle was talking about, he's a streamer. If he has a big game, try to trade him.
Yes.
To somebody that sees him as Mahomes and doesn't just say, who am I really getting in this player? Just try to trade him for anything. If you can get a wide receiver 2 or 3 out of this deal, that's fine. Go after it. Or a starting tight end. Something that you can get from Mahomes. But he definitely will have that value inflated despite his numbers because of who he is.
Yep, absolutely. If he has a big game, people might say, Mahomes is, it just was a bad start of the year for him in fantasy, but he's turned it around. Even though last year it was the same thing for the whole second half of the year. But yeah, I'm totally with you there. Now we both have Matthew Stafford inside our top 10. Yesterday, I said that I think I would play, who was it? I think I'd play Joe Flacco over Matthew Stafford. Once I did my rankings, I actually have Stafford at 9 and Flacco at 11. So I changed my mind slightly. You have Stafford at 10. I have him at 8. So again, both really like him against the Seahawks. The Seahawks have been giving up points to quarterbacks a lot as of late since week 4. Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, Daniel Jones, and Josh Allen all had really good games against the Seahawks. So, Stafford gets back Puka and Cooper Kupp last week, finishes as a quarterback 6. I think that can happen again, where he's a top 10 play again this week against the Seahawks.
Yeah, for the record, I don't think you need to extend to play Joe Flacco this week unless you're looking for a replacement for like Brock Purdy or Russell Wilson. And if you're streaming and playing the game with Wilson and having good success the last 2 weeks, you need someone to plug in a similar vein. I think you can stream Flacco. If you're Purdy and you were rolling with him through this time, and you could have been doing that because he's putting up numbers, I think you can go with Flacco. But Flacco has a little bit of volatility where I don't see that happening with Stafford. That's what the difference is probably, rankings there. So I just think Stafford with those weapons. And we talked about Kyren Williams stealing all the touchdowns, but again, I think there's going to be a lot of scoring to go around in this game because the Seahawks and Rams should both be going after it. The defense is vulnerable. That's a perfect situation. So that's great for Geno Smith and Matthew Stafford, right? If they can put the ball quite up a lot. I mean, that's where you usually find the biggest games. I mean, what did we have last week? Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins were 2 of the highest scoring quarterbacks. They were playing against each other in a high-scoring affair. So that often happens here. So I do like Stafford. I do like Geno Smith as well this week. But Stafford, I actually have 10-11 there this week with Smith. So, yeah, I'm expecting them to go back and forth, have a lot of fun, and hopefully it won't be one of those 20-17 fantasy disappointments.
Yeah, I know. It could be one of those divisional games that end up being a lower scoring than we are hoping for, but he does have high upside in that game. Now, one quarterback that's been really bad for fantasy, especially the last 2 games he's played, Dak Prescott, quarterback 28 and quarterback 20 in the last 2 weeks he's played. You have him at quarterback 9 this week against the Falcons. I'm not nearly as high on him as you are. I'm at quarterback 18. Why do you like Dak so much this week?
Yeah, I actually think the Cowboys can go in and beat the Falcons. I think this is one of the better matchups for them because the Falcons' strength is taken with run. The Cowboys don't care about running. They're not good at running anyway. So what you can do is go after the Falcons' corners, and you can't pass the Falcons. The Falcons have a very limited pass rush as well. So that means Dak is going to be locked in, high volume. We know it's going to happen with Kirk Cousins on the other side attacking the Cowboys again. Opportunity for a lot of points to be on the board in this one. And the Cowboys are pretty much going to get them through the air this week. So I can see Dak throwing for 303 easily in this one, going back and forth with Cousins, who's also a decent play, actually. Again, just like the correlation between Stafford and Smith, I have Dak at 9 and Cousins at 12. So I just think this atmosphere inside the comfort of Mercedes-Benz Stadium/Dome, it's going to be good because then it's no weather concerns. They can just go back and forth and toss it around. And I think this is going to be one of the underrated fantasy games to watch on both sides. I think everything is good here except for the Cowboys backfield.
Let's talk about the number 2 fantasy quarterback on the season, and that's Baker Mayfield. And it's not even just in total points where he's played more time than others. It's in points per game as well, behind only Lamar Jackson. And even last week, without his top 2 weapons, he still put up 22 fantasy points in week 8. But now he has to face the Chiefs in Kansas City, and they have been tough about against fantasy quarterbacks. Now, the one good quarterback they played, Lamar Jackson, put up 25 points against them in week 1. I guess Joe Burrow, they did play, but that was in week 2 before he got it going, 17 points. They allowed Brock Purdy 17 points. The rest of the quarterbacks they face are Gardner Minshew, Derek Carr, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins, like guys that aren't really typical good fantasy quarterbacks. What do you do with Baker Mayfield this week? Because we both have him ranked pretty low. Quarterback 15 or 17 for me and quarterback 16 for you.
Yeah, he's only a 16 because of his body work. And look, that's still a 14 spot drop from where he scored. So that's a significant drop where we're not trusting him at all this week. I just look at this situation. I think K. Dotton could be his source of points again. The Chiefs do allow a lot to tight ends, but they don't really allow much to wide receivers. They're not going to help the running back set up the downfield passing game either because they can shut down the run. So I don't see the good avenues for Baker Mayfield to produce this week the way you want him to. So that's why I'm down at 16. Now we're debating him and a couple other guys in a similar vein. I actually have them sandwiching Baker in the rankings. I have Bo Nix at 15 for the Broncos at the Ravens and Jared Goff at 17. Now, Nix, we talked about why it's a little tricky because he's a rookie QB on the road. And again, the Ravens don't give up much in the way of running, and that's been a big part of his production. So there's that. But Jared Goff is an interesting one because I think he's a polarizing player. I think everyone says, oh, he's an MVP candidate. He's completing all of his passes. And then you look at the fantasy numbers and like, they're not that good, right? I mean, all the usual MVPs have put up great fantasy numbers, by the way. They have a correlation there. But I don't see this being great for Jared Goff. The Packers' pass defense is tough. I think you're seeing Montgomery and Gibbs take a lot of this. And then the other thing, Michelle, is like it's hard to want to play a quarterback who's doesn't have to even throw for 100 yards for them to score 50 points. Like you don't really want to go there. So I don't get it how he's an MVP when they can score 50 and he can only throw for 100 yards. I just don't see it. And I don't want him anywhere on my fantasy team this week against Green Bay.
Yeah, and he's not going to win MVP. He's
it's ridiculous.
It's going to go to Lamar or Josh Allen or one of those big name guys.
One of the fantasy producers. I mean, Jalen, any of these guys, right? Because numbers add up to MVP. And we'll tell you, he's not putting up the numbers that we like, and that's not going to give him MVP. So I just think there's been a kind of an inflation. Oh, he's playing so well. But when you actually look at the numbers, they're not so good for what we want.
Yeah, and I think Goff in good matchups is a fine fantasy quarterback. I mean, 3 of the last 4 weeks he's played, he's finished as quarterback 9, 4, and 10. It was last week where he just didn't have to throw at all because they were dominating against the Titans. And so against the Packers, it should be a closer game, no matter who the quarterback is. And I do think Jordan Love ends up playing. I just think it's too big of a game for him to sit out unless it's just a really bad injury, but it doesn't seem like it is. So I do think he ends up playing. Jordan Love's going to put up numbers. So Jared Goff could. Now, you mentioned, though, so you don't like Goff, you don't like Nix, you don't like Mayfield this week. You mentioned you shouldn't be starting Joe Flacco unless you've been relying on Russell Wilson or Brock Purdy. But would you start Flacco over all these three guys? Or where would you rank these four guys with adding in Joe Flacco in here?
Yeah, now you're complicating things, Michelle. But I think I would put him actually after Nix and before Mayfield. That's where I put him because
So
Nix
you're putting
again.
Nix at the top of this group.
Yeah, I am because again, he can still get it done passing. He's not an incompetent passer. I just don't see it having a high ceiling this week, right? I don't 250 and 2 used to be like, okay, that's going to put you in the top 12, but not necessarily, right? And with a lot of quarterbacks have good matchups, like then you can look at the rankings, but the other thing is what am I going to get out of this player? And that's really what you're looking for in the end, because you don't necessarily have all these players on your team, but can I get 250 and 2? That's where I want to start with that. I think you can say that for Bo Nix. Flacco has just a bit of volatility because he's in a tough spot. The Vikings could turn him over. They could put some pressure on him, and then you're feeling a clunker. So it's more how many variables come into it. I think there's too many things working against that trio, Flacco, Mayfield, and Goff, where I cannot slide any of them in the top 12 this week. And Nix, again, I know I said the Ravens contain the running, but at least he could do something. He could get a touchdown, right? Rushing, and that would post his numbers up a little bit higher.
Yeah, I actually have Goff and Flacco as both top 11 options. I have Goff at 10, Flacco at 11. So I like both of them this week, and I would play them over Baker Mayfield and Bo Nix. Now, I do have Nix ranked higher than Baker right now, but at the end of the week, I might have those switch. I don't think Bo Nix is going to end up having a good game whatsoever at Baltimore. I know the Ravens secondary isn't very good, but they had injuries last week. They could get those guys back. It's still at Baltimore on the road. I don't trust Bo Nix at all. Baker maybe can get lucky with some deep balls against the Chiefs. I don't know. I don't really like either Nix or Mayfield this week. But that is it for today's episode. That's it for our running back and quarterback rankings. If you have any additional questions, hit us up on Twitter. I can be found at BallBlastEm, BallBlastEM. Vinnie, where can they find you?
Oh, it's pretty simple. It's my name, Vinnie Iyer. So if you know my name and you see the name on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, and you should subscribe on YouTube and like and do all that good stuff on top of listening to our podcast and subscribing where you get that. It's right under there. It's just Vinnie Iyer. It's all this one word, my name. Pretty simple. Keeping it real here for you guys. And again, reach out, and you can also follow our work. I'm at sportingnews.com. I do the start, sit, and kind of rankings combination column, and Michelle, all great analytics work there at NFL.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also write fantasy articles for PFF. So I will be posting all of that great stuff throughout the week. We'll be back tomorrow talking about our wide receiver and tight end rankings. We'll talk to you then. Bye, y'all.